at home is like freaking me out.
So this is Joel.
Hello, internet people. Matthews fans.
It's my first time meeting him. He hangs out on YouTube sometimes in the chat, and we talk a bit. And it just so happens that he's nearby.
Yep.
Tell us what's going on today.
And I'm bringing Matthew a Superdwarf Reticulated Python that I thought was a beautiful snake and figured I could handle, but I think it's a bit beyond me. And so I brought it to Matthew, and Matthew thankfully said he would take the snake off my hands and will offer me one of his snakes when we get a better idea of what I'd be ready for.
Well, we've talked about this a lot, different snakes, good beginner snakes and everything. This is a Superdwarf Reticulated Python, and we'll take a look at it in a sec. This snake is actually one of Queen's grandchildren, so I knew kind of where it came from, kind of the bloodline, so I know it's not going to get super big. So that's the only reason I even agreed to take it, because if I didn't know where it came from, I wouldn't really want it. And for the most part, I won't take any new snakes. I won't even really rescue snakes anymore because I'm too scared of getting mites into my collection. It's a nightmare. I told him if this snake had mites, I'll die.
He's gonna die. This was the only snake where I got him from, so I think that the chances are low.
And he offered to just give it to me, but like for me, I want him to have a great snake experience, especially for his first snake. So I'm going to give him one of my snakes, a boa or a ball python. We're going to figure it out. He's going to start spending a bit of time with me, and we're going to see what he likes and pick the right snake for him. This could be the right snake for someone, and Superdwarfs are great animals. They're smart. They're beautiful. They're one of my favorite animals. But at the same time, I really don't believe that they make the best first pet for a first-time snake owner.
Yeah,
especially like if you don't have the time to kind of put in a lot of time with them. With any snake and with any animal, the time that you put in right from the beginning, like right when they're born, is the most important. It's the most important. If you don't get them kind of from the time they're born and put that time in, then you're not going to end up with... You might end up with a snake that just has a nice disposition and everything. Mm-hmm. But you could also end up with a snake like Calypso. And I handled Calypso from the time she was born, and she was just never one to be very sweet.
He's not bad. Like he's cage defensive.
So he just doesn't like being taken out.
He just doesn't like being taken out. Once he's out, he'll be fine right now. He's pretty good. So you can see me getting a bit like headshot already, but he's only struck at me. That's only when I sort of went to grab him and it was a little bit fast. But he's a beautifully colored snake, and I think once he gets out,
he's about to shed. He's in shed too. Yeah, he's in shed.
In shed, I wondered whether
he's rubbed his head a bit too.
Yeah, there's head rub when I got him.
Yeah, you know what?
Was the in shed be what is partially making a bit grumpier?
It could be. It could be. Like for me, I don't really find a big difference from animals in or out of shed. Right. But that's once again, I've held them from the time they're born.
The first week I had him, pull him out, nothing. He was a total sweetheart. And then the next couple of weeks, lunging, cage defensive-ness. But he's probably fine for somebody like you, right?
He's a beautiful snake, and he's calm and everything now. But these snakes, they can be very finicky. So if anything's off, right? Like if the temperature is off, if it's a little too hot, a little too cold, they'll try to get somewhere where the temperature is better. If the conditions, if it doesn't have enough hides, if it has too much space, if it has too little space, like whatever is going on with this snake, they're a lot more finicky than like ball pythons and boas.
Well, one thing I wondered was because he's in a 2x4, he's in a 4x2x2, mm-hmm. whether he was just like when I was going in to get him, there's too much of an opportunity for him to run, and then that kind of gets him going a bit.
And that can be part of it too. I have some snakes that they are put in a smaller enclosure and then they calm right down. Mm-hmm. Then I have other snakes where you put them in a smaller enclosure and they'll just try getting out until they rub their face off.
Yeah.
He's just nervous. He was a bit nervous.
He's nervous, yeah. And this retics are a bit reactive, right? So
same thing with every snake. Every snake has so many different personalities, and there are some snakes that are I have one of these, Jasmine, and she's just the best. Like, she'll be super calm all the time and whatever. Still, when you first take them out, sometimes they think they're going to be fed. Sometimes they're home defensive or whatever. Like, it's their territory. Leave me in my territory. Another thing I found really strange was, like, I moved Nintendo into Calypso's home while I was cleaning Calypso's home.
Both boys?
No, Calypso
Calypso's a girl,
and
sorry,
Nintendo's a boy.
Yeah.
But Nintendo's always been a little bit flighty. He's never been, like, nippy or whatever.
Right.
But when I tried to take him out of Calypso's home, he was kind of, like, striky for the first time. And I was wondering if it's, like, one of two things. Either maybe he smells Calypso.
Yeah. So
it puts him into, like, hey, this is my woman, get away from me, like, defensive because of, like, being in a sexy mode.
Yeah.
Or I was wondering if because the cage is white, it doesn't feel as safe or something. Because Calypso's home is white, versus the other homes are like dark and black or like PVC, black PVC. Do you know what the pairing was for these two? Like,
no.
Did you get it off of Chris or?
No, I got it from a girl who got it from Chris about 2.5 years ago.
Do you know who the girl is?
I could probably find her.
Yeah, see if you could find her.
Yeah.
Or we'll try and figure out what the pairing is. If you are getting a Superdwarf in Canada, it's either coming from Chuck Royale or Chris.
Right.
Or like there's another guy, Tom LS.
See, there's a guy in London too, I think. He's breeding him.
Yeah, Jim has some too. Gyms usually are not like, I don't think Jim has any high percentage ones yet. Like the highest percentage he's had is like 60 something.
Yeah, he had some nice platinum ones about this size, but he said they would get to 7 to 8 feet.
See, because this one he's having a little bit of, he's also having a little bit of, like, I don't know if it's a little dry, you know what I mean? Like, because the throat, you see the little kind of like bubble under the throat?
Yeah. Oh, these two pouches here?
Yeah, like sometimes they get a little almost like having a little bit of a cold or whatever. They get a little bit congested. So easy, like in Canada, like our heat turns on and the air gets dry. So you gotta have a humidifier.
He had substrate, and I was watering the substrate. I was spraying the substrate. Yeah. But I was reading like a little bit from Garrett, or seeing his videos about keeping them on the dry side because of the bacteria that comes with the wet.
Well, here's what you want to think about. The difference between, okay, when we lick our lips, we make them wet, and then they get dry faster.
Right.
So anything that you kind of wet, like when you wet the substrate and stuff and you wet the snake and then it just dries out, it actually makes it kind of almost more dry.
Right.
Whereas if you have the moisture coming from the air, because the air is moist, so when you have humidity from a humidifier, you're creating an environment that is more moisture rich. Mm-hmm. When you're spraying an animal, you're creating moisture, but it's not real. It's almost like a lie.
Right.
You know, it's just like you're spraying it, but it's not changing the condition. It's just doing something temporary. I really don't like keeping babies on substrate. Things can go wrong. They can swallow it. The dust from it and all that stuff can bother them. Whereas once they're an adult, if you want to set them up in substrate, if you want to try and make some sort of kind of like mini bioactive thing, go for it.
Yeah.
When they're babies, it's just they're more delicate. They can have problems. You're not going to have any substrate related problems if there's no substrate, right?
Yeah.
And as a beginner, anything to make things easier and to make things work, you want to do, right?
I kind of stuck with what the previous owner was doing, just so if he was sort of like, you know, used to something, he would have it. Like I got his enclosure and the substrate with him.
Anyways, we had a nice little chat. Now I'm going to spend the day with Joel. We're going to do some cleaning. He's going to hang out with some different snakes, and then we're going to come back and he's going to tell you what he thought.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks.
This snake is Queen's grandchild. So 2 of her babies made this snake, and now you got to understand that can be a little bit intimidating. Now, if you go and mess around with his face when he's just like, he's kind of curious what's going on, right? But there's a little bit of fear in him, and there's like a wonder, like, am I going to be fed or whatever? And retics are super responsive. Like a ball python, you could open their home and they might not even look at you. But with a retic, they stare at you, they eye you down, and are like, what's going on? And there's almost this thing that happens. It's just kind of like with a dog. So the correct and best thing to do, even with a snake this size, is to use some sort of hook, okay? And you could get away without using a hook or whatever, and I like using a spoon because I know that a spoon is not gonna hurt them or anything. I don't like that hooks are like made out of metal and everything, and probably gonna be fine, but it's just like, see, with this spoon, I can just touch it, and that little kind of distraction. You give them a little distraction so they're not looking at you and you're not being eyed down. Because it's just the same thing like dogs do it too. They eye you down, what's going to happen, you know? And then you pet them and you play with them and it's fine. And I don't really need to do this. I know I could just go in and reach them. But just the best thing to do is to always kind of just... think of it not even like you're letting them know that you're coming in to get them, but you're distracting them from you, because their whole attention is on you. They're looking at you, they're a little tense, they're a little excited, and you put your hand in, your hand is warm, and they might just react. And you have to understand, snakes are very instinctive, they're very reactive. It doesn't mean that they're nasty, it doesn't mean they want to hurt you, and they really don't. They're just a little bit scared, and that's all it is. So if you were to get bit, it was your fault. Already, like, see, he's just kind of chilling, but he's still wondering what's going on. So the quicker we get past this whole, even though now, you know, it's like we're wasting a pile of time, and like, what's going on? He's still wondering what's going on, but we distract him a little bit, and then we just go in and we grab it. And we don't waste any time doing that. If you spend too much time hesitating, that's when you're going to get struck. That's when you're going to get bit and stuff. And that's not what we're trying to do. Now I want to show you with this snake a few things that have been kind of going a little bit wrong. Because, and it's not necessarily like anyone's fault. It's just some people don't really realize what's going on. Especially when it's your first animal. And when babies... snakes come along, if you're not like, you see what I just took him out of, okay? I took him out of a bin, and the bin is clean, and it actually has a place for him to hide, because that bowl has a hole, so there's a hole in the bowl that he can climb underneath and be okay in. He was kept on substrate. The previous owner kept him on substrate, and the owner before him kept him on substrate too. And actually, this snake's 2.5 years old. Like, I can't even believe how small this snake is. But you have to understand that the environments were a little bit dry. I suggested to the previous owner to get a humidifier for his next snake, because you need a humidifier for the air if the air is dry. I kind of think of it almost like a baby snake, even though it is 2.5 years old. But it is still small. And I just feel that kind of like small snakes are not really as strong as when they get a little bit bigger. When the snakes are smaller, everything's a little bit more delicate. If you have a 6-foot snake that ingests a bit of substrate, it's not going to be that huge of a deal. But if you have a little snake like this ingest some substrate, that could cost it its life. And it's been on substrate now for a while, and it's still alive, so that's okay. So I'm not saying that just substrate's going to like ruin an animal's life, but it is possible it can. You can see the top of the head has been rubbed. So is it trying to get out? Was that from a long time ago? Is it more recent? Is it just rubbing to try and get out? Because the interesting thing is that inside this small home, it's actually pretty calm. It's not trying to get out or anything, and it can go and hide inside under here. And everything here is just clean. It's not going to cause any problems for it, okay? But you have this snake in a dry environment where it's having a little bit of problem from being a little bit too dry. It's almost like he's starting to have a respiratory infection, or he might have a little one. And things like this, if it... I can't even, like... It doesn't really show the best. As he's not stopping. He's got a bit of a lump on top of his head, like a little bumpy on top of his head, and under his throat he does have a bit of a lump that is not really showing that much now. Here's the thing, there's a combination of things that are happening. There's the dryness in the air, and then on top of that there's the substrate, and the substrate has kind of like dust particles. So if you have dust particles from the substrate and the dry air mixing together, it ends up making the snake not do as well. lots of snakes can have this problem, and if you get it at the beginning, it's funny because it's like the lump, it was there it was there yesterday, and now it's not showing, but like he had a lump under his neck, kind of like a frog thing, and it looks like there's extra air, but with a little bit of, you know, just clean conditions, no substrate, sanitary as possible, and figuring out what works. You know, it might be that they need a bit more of a bigger space because they're trying to get out of the small space all the time. But another thing that can happen is the opposite. So he was actually, the previous owner had him in a pretty big home. So inside that big home, they can get sometimes a little bit more like territorial and stuff too. He's 2.5 years old. Yeah, he looks like a little mini queen. These are amazing animals, and they can be amazing pets, but at the same time, if you don't know how to read a snake, it's very easy to get intimidated by them or scared by them. And if you're scared of them, then like, look at how little it is. Like, of course it's going to be scared of you. We're naming this guy Prince. Well, you know, there was Queen, so we gotta have Prince. Yeah. See, so the thing that is so amazing about super dwarfs is just they are very aware. Like, I remember the first time that I saw one, I really noticed like how their eyes, like, look at how the eyes, they look around and they see what's going on, and they're very aware of everything. When you're starting and you don't understand what's going on in there, and they're thinking and they got stuff going on, it's tricky because it's just like the snake is thinking stuff and you have no idea what it's thinking. So without knowing how to read a snake, dealing with one of these when it gets bigger is not always the funnest thing to do. And they kind of stay that way. Like that's the thing that's so great about them, and what's so hard about them at the same time. They're amazing. They're beautiful. They're smart. They know when you come into the room. They're ready to go. Ready to go. They come out and they're like, "Hey, feed me." I'm gonna show that.